Allen Lund Company looks forward to seeing you at Matt's in March. OOIDA, representing America's truckers since 1973, presents Landline Now with your host, Mark Redding.
Over the past few years, we've been hearing about a trend. Drivers who work for a company using that company's truck and with their loads, routes, and pickup and delivery times given to them by the carrier. And yet, at the end of the year of working, they don't receive a W-2 like an employee. They get a 1099. I'll talk with Tom Crowley and Aaron Lynch of OOIDA's Compliance Department. If you've ever thought about pausing your truck insurance, think again. However, if you're looking for ways to save money while your truck is parked, Trina Skywalker and Lisa Waskey of OOIDA's Truck Insurance Department have some helpful suggestions. Ashley Blackford talks with them today. And finally, as the issue of nuclear verdicts continues to raise concerns in trucking, several states are taking action by looking at tort reform. Meanwhile, Michigan's governor is pushing a multi-billion-dollar plan to fix the state's roads. Scott Thompson discusses both issues with our state legislative expert, Keith Goebel. But first, the news with Scott Thompson.
Thanks, Mark. We begin with our weekly check on diesel prices, which are on the decline again. The Energy Information Administration reports that last week's average came in at $3.58 a gallon, down more than 5 cents from the previous week. That makes for 2 straight weeks of declines on the EIA survey. Diesel is now more than 42 cents cheaper than it was a year ago. All 5 major regions in the EIA report saw prices dip last week, led by a 6.4 cent drop in the Rocky Mountains. Meanwhile, daily diesel prices also on the decline. ProMiles.com reported the Tuesday morning average at $3.59 a gallon, down 3.5 cents from the same day last week. Optimism is springing up in the spot market. Brent Hutto with Truck Stop says load posting volumes were up 15.3% above the 5-year average.
Load posting volumes were up. They increased just 2.6 week to week, but they're 15% above the 5-week average. Rates increased another 2 cents. Last week when we were talking, they came up 2 cents from the previous week, and they went up 2 more cents. Vans about $1.91, and flatbed is $2.40, and refrigerated is $2.12. Now, those are the posted rates, as I like to say all the time. Please negotiate. Please negotiate. I'll say it one more time. Please negotiate these, because if you know the conditions in the markets are in every market in the spot market, every lane in the spot market is unique. And so every owner-operator ought to be negotiating really just fairly, but strictly within every one of them.
With fuel prices on the decline, Hutto added he expects the fuel surcharge to continue to hover around 45 cents until the U.S. gets more domestic crude. Some positive news on the cost of operations front, courtesy of ATA's Technology and Maintenance Council and Decisive Inc. A new report from the two shows that parts and labor costs went back on the decline in the fourth quarter of last year, after rising in the third. The cost of parts was down 2%, the cost for labor down just under 1%. Decisive said that's good news for service providers and fleets, as it shows growing stability in supply chains. The Department of Labor has a new leader. The U.S. Senate on Monday confirmed Lori Chavez DeRemer to lead the department by a vote of 67 to 32. Chavez DeRemer's previous support for the Protecting the Right to Organize Act, also known as the PRO Act, as a member of Congress, was a major talking point during her confirmation process. The proposed bill would use the controversial ABC test to determine if a worker is an employee or an independent contractor, something OOIDA said would create confusion and jeopardize the ability of small business truckers to continue working as independent contractors. But Chavez DeRemer, during questioning, walked back her previous support.
I recognize that bill was imperfect, and I also recognize that I am no longer representing Oregon as a lawmaker. If confirmed, my job will be to implement President Trump's policy vision, and my guiding principle will be President Trump's guiding principle, ensuring a level playing field for businesses, unions, and most importantly, the American worker.
The PRO Act never went to a vote when Chavez DeRemer was in Congress, but the bill was reintroduced in both chambers last week. We continue to monitor the response and potential fallout from the Trump administration's tariff push. North of the border, the Canadian Trucking Alliance has asked the Council of the Federation, made up of premiers for each of Canada's 13 provinces and territories, to implement measures that provide the trucking industry some relief. The Canadian Trucking Alliance called the current situation a crisis, not just due to tariffs, but also what the group says is the worst freight market in 40 years due to overcapacity, poor North American market conditions, and an out-of-control underground economy that is driving compliant fleets out of business. The Alliance is calling for several relief measures, including an immediate removal of the carbon tax, especially ahead of another scheduled increase on April 1st, removal or a reduction in the federal excise tax on diesel, and the development of a trucking tax relief program that would reduce the base cost of plates and fees or providing rebates for previously paid plates and fees. Meanwhile, in British Columbia, Premier David Eby, during a news conference, called for a response that includes retaliatory tolls on American truckers who are traveling through the province on their way to Alaska.
It'll be one tool among a number of tools that enables us to respond to escalations from the American side. It will not be implemented immediately, but we will have it available if it's required.
Premier Eby didn't lay out how tolls would be applied or what the tolling amount might be. President Trump has said he still plans to move forward with his tariff plan, despite last week putting them on pause for most Canadian and Mexican goods until April 2nd. ABF Freight continues scooping up former Yellow terminals. The LTL carrier announced it's acquiring 2 leased properties for a total of $11.5 million. One is in Kent, Washington. The other is in Aurora, Colorado. Combined, the terminals add 168 doors to ABF's network. The Oklahoma Turnpike Authority is busy with expansion projects. Officials providing updates in a recent news release. For one, work is about to resume on the South Extension Turnpike, which is intended to relieve congestion on Interstate 35 in the Oklahoma City area. Meanwhile, a new interchange on I-44 Will Rogers Turnpike near Claremore is expected to open later this month, and a new interchange on the I-344 John Kilpatrick Turnpike at County Line Road has entered the design phase. Construction on that project, which will widen the turnpike to 6 lanes there, is set to begin next spring. And finally, there's been a change to the upcoming Make-A-Wish Mother's Day truck convoy in Manheim, Pennsylvania. Organizers have moved the event up 1 day to May 10th, something they believe will improve attendance and encourage more participation. The 26-mile convoy travels through Lancaster County. All funds raised go to Make-A-Wish, which grants wishes to local children battling critical illnesses. That's Lane Line Out News for today. I'm Scott Thompson.
Thanks, Scott. Truckers often work as much as 70 hours a week, but they aren't paid for a significant portion of that time. We all know why. Pay that's by the mile instead of by the hour, the way that the overwhelming majority of Americans are paid. Now, a bill in Congress would change that. The Guaranteeing Overtime for Truckers, or Got Truckers Act, would require overtime pay for truck drivers. The bill is H.R. 1962 in the House and S. 893 in the Senate. Call your members of Congress now to talk to them about this bill and what it would do for the trucking industry. The phone number is 202-224-3121, or you can write a letter using the website fightingfortruckers.com. Again, that phone number is 202-224-3121, or write a letter using fightingfortruckers.com. Starting Wednesday, Marty Ellis and OOIDA's tour truck, The Spirit of the American Trucker, will be at the TA Express in Statesboro, Georgia. That's located at exit 116 on Interstate 16. Stop in, say hi to Marty, and join OOIDA for a $10 discount. Next, I'll discuss when giving a driver a 1099 instead of the W-2 is a problem with Tom Crowley and Aaron Lynch of OOIDA's Compliance Department. Ashley Blackford covers some money-saving tips with Trina Skywalker and Lisa Waskey of OOIDA's Truck Insurance Department. And Scott Thompson discusses tort reform efforts in several states with our state legislative expert, Keith Goebel. We'll be back in just a moment with more news and information. Please stay with us. I'm Mark Reddick, and this is Landline Now.
Protect your diesel engine with Howe's Diesel Defender. Restore vital lubricity, eliminate injector deposits, and boost fuel economy by 5% or more. Power, performance, protection, all in one. Howe's Diesel Defender, available now.
Firestone's FD694 drive tire for long-haul and regional applications now delivers 126,000 more removal miles than the Yokohama TY517 MC2. Contact your Firestone commercial dealer to learn more.
Are you tired of the IRS following you around like a dark cloud? Call 888-557-4020 and get your life back.
Landline Now. Welcome back. Over the past few years, we've been hearing about a trend. The information comes from drivers, many of whom talk about it when they visit OOIDA's tour truck. Those drivers say they're driving for a company using that company's truck. They do not own nor ever will own the truck or any of the associated equipment. Their loads, routes, pickup, and delivery times are all given to them by the carrier that hired them. And yet, when they get their tax documents at the end of the year of working, they don't receive a W-2 like an employee. They get a 1099. So why is that a concern? To get an idea of what's going on and what it means to drivers involved, I'm joined now by Tom Crowley and Aaron Lynch of OOIDA's Compliance Department. Guys, thank you very much for joining me.
Thanks for having us, Mark.
Thanks as always, Mark. Glad to be here.
Can we kind of start just talking about the 1099 document? Who's going to get one of those, and what essentially is that for?
Well, typically, owner-operators or
independent contractors would get a 1099 from a carrier and or a broker, anybody that they do business with, and it will basically just say this is the income that was paid to you from our business over this period of time. And out of that, the independent contractor or owner-operator, whatever the situation is, they would deduct, when they do their taxes, they would deduct their operating expenses from that amount and pay taxes on the proper amount after that's done. Is what happens here is you have a misclassification of employment. And I know there's been a lot of information out there. There's been different rules and regulations that have come up about this, and with each administration, that also seems to change a little bit based on what the administration decides. Yeah, I mean, a good rule of thumb that I always consider is if you own the equipment that you're bringing on and leasing onto the carrier, it's a pretty good chance you're a 1099. If that carrier is providing said equipment, you should probably be an employee driver on a W-2, meaning that taxes are different. So if you're an owner-operator, that means you have to take out taxes throughout the year to be able to pay at the end of the year. And as far as being an employee driver, you are allowed benefits and certain insurance, so they pay into your Social Security, things of that nature.
That's kind of what the carriers are getting out of this, isn't it? I mean, basically, I don't have to withhold taxes. I don't have to pay my share as a company of Social Security payments or FICA tax. I don't have to pay benefits. I don't have to pay workers' comp. I'm just going to shift that all onto the worker.
Yeah, and then the problem becomes when that worker files their taxes at the end of the year, they have not looked for that and saved that money back to pay those taxes, and they end up with a big tax debt that they didn't know was coming their way. They just thought through the year, hey, this was all right, until it's tax time. Everybody thinks it's good until it's time to pay Uncle Sam.
Yeah.
And the biggest thing I see is I got guys calling in here that have been doing it 20 or 30 years that way, and they've just made it to where it's okay. They've convinced themselves that they're okay, and they may be 50, 60, 70 years old, and what I don't understand is they're not thinking about retirement or the future. They haven't paid anything into taxes or Social Security for all this time when they could have.
And this is something that owner-operators deal with as well, because they are paid on a 1099 and they pay their own taxes and stuff. If you're not a company driver and you don't pay into Social Security, Medicaid, unemployment, and all this kind of stuff, those are benefits that you can't later draw on.
Yeah, and you don't have an IRA or a 401k as an owner-operator unless you go set one up yourself, right? So you have to set yourself up for that. And being misclassified, these newer guys don't understand that tax bill hits at the end of the year, especially if you haven't been saving a certain percentage out of your pay. And a good percentage, I would say, is usually 15 to 25% save out for taxes.
Well, and of course, I mean, talking about that, one of the things that I think is a real kind of a catch in here that can really get someone is the FICA or Social Security tax, because if you're with an employer, I think it's 7%, they pay 7%, of your salary, you pay 7% of your salary. But if you are self-employed, you're supposed to pay the whole load. And then you've got income taxes on top of that, plus state income taxes. And, in addition, as you mentioned, Tom, if you don't pay into social, you don't get.
Yep.
On top of that, they can go back 7 years for the money that you haven't paid.
Yes, they can. And this is money not only that you should have paid, but if you are a company driver and you are being misclassified under this situation, you're losing out a lot. I mean, the company should be paying in, their share of everything that goes in there. So, as you mentioned earlier, it's a benefit for the carrier or for the company, not so much for the driver. I mean, they think it is at the time because they're getting a little bit more money in their pocket at the time, but it's just that they're shorting the taxes that should have been paid. And also then you don't have protections. We get calls from folks that are, by all means, it would be a company driver paid on a 1099 instead, misclassified employment. And we get calls from them saying, hey, the carrier didn't pay me. What do I do? Well, you don't have some of those employee connections or resources if you're paid on a 1099. Call the Department of Wages and Labor. I give that number out quite a bit. And if you're paid on a 1099, they'll say, oh, well, you're a contractor. We can't help you.
Yeah, a lot of times for any kind of document like that, a contract, a lease agreement, you're going to end up in court if you have a discrepancy, a breach of contract, something like that, a payment issue. You're not allowed any of those protections about, getting paid from the Department of Labor or anything like that. It's not that they don't care. It's just that that's outside of the scope of what they do because you have a contract issue, not an employment issue at that point.
And that's something that you keep in mind. As a contractor, you operate under a contract. As an employee, you operate under employment agreement. And your employment agreement is usually not a contractual obligation. It's a at will.
Yeah, and it's governed by each state.
Yep.
So you need to check your state's rules and regulations in regards to that because it could be vastly different.
Yeah, and the Department of Wages and Labor has a line that you can call in if you have issues with a carrier and you are an employee, and you can call in and you can get them involved in it. But when you call in, and as soon as you tell them you are a 1099 contractor, it's not a direction for them to go. So as Aaron said, you're going to end up in court if you want to pursue that payment.
And you know what's worse, Mark, is when you're really an employee, but you're moonlighting as a 1099 owner-operator, thinking that you're getting paid all this money up front, and you have no contract. And then when things go sideways, you have no employee protections, and you don't have the contract you were supposed to have either.
Yeah, because there should be something in there. I know that's a little bit naive, but there should be something in that contract to protect both sides.
That's the worst I see, though.
Yeah,
you don't have either one.
It is, and a lot of people, they get into this thinking, well, there would be a contract forthcoming. But some of these carriers are not quite above board, and they've been doing this a long time, and they know how to get around and get over on you.
Well, like I said earlier, they're saving 15 to 25% doing this. You're getting paid more on the front end, you think, and all the while you're not taking out the taxes, which you have to pay on the back end, and you're not getting any benefits paid in for your retirement either. So you're really not coming ahead. You're just more short-sighted than anything. You're not planning for the future.
I would agree.
Absolutely. I'm curious, guys, you've mentioned a couple of times that you get a lot of phone calls about this. How often is this happening? Is there a pattern in terms of where it's happening? What kinds of carriers or operations are doing this?
Yeah, I would say, a lot of the calls that we get come from the Illinois area.
Yeah, same with lease purchases.
Yeah.
All Illinois, Chicago area. I would say more than half. It's hard to put a number on it. I don't have the percentages. I don't have any algorithm I've done, but it's more than half the phone calls are from the Chicago area.
Yeah. When we get a call from somebody and they said, I was running for this carrier out of Chicago, I cringe just a little bit because it's not good up there, the stuff that's happening. And I've spoke to many people from that area, and if there's somebody calling me saying I'm getting ready to go to that area to a carrier, I tell them straight up front, man, think that one over because we hear a lot of bad stuff coming out of there.
Yeah, and I think Illinois does have at the state level a wage payment bureau that if you're an employee, that if someone does not pay you your wages, they're supposed to help you go get them. But I've also talked with people here in the building who have made calls to them and are like, oh, we don't do trucking. That's not the law, but you're running into another barrier there. And I think it's just because of the overwhelming amount of problems in trucking with this kind of thing.
I agree. And, that's one of the things in trucking in the transportation industry. There are situations where just because it's been done a certain way for a long time, people think, well, that's the right way to do it. No. Just because you've done something one way for 20 years doesn't make it the correct way to do it.
Yeah, and let me reintroduce this. I've talked to guys 20, 30, 40 years sometimes that have been doing it that way and have been misclassified for 20, 30, 40 years. It doesn't necessarily mean you've been doing it right. And don't take my and Tom's word for it or yours, Mark. Go down to the IRS and fill out, what's that form?
The SS8 form.
And find out for yourself.
Yeah, that's a form that you can fill out. You can get this offline. Just put in SS as in Social Security and the number 8. And it's a form. You can fill it out, send it into the IRS, and they will make a determination on whether you are an employee or a contractor.
That's interesting because, boy, you get the IRS involved, it's a whole new ballgame.
It is. It is, absolutely.
Okay, and folks, we will find a link where you can get right to that form online and put it on our website, landlinenow.com. Again, that's at landlinenow.com. If you're in this situation, if you're working for one of these 1099 carriers, how do you protect yourself? What is your best course of action to either fix this situation where you are, which I don't know, it doesn't sound likely, or to extricate yourself from it?
Well, I would say that probably your second option would be the better one, to get out of this situation. I mean, if you're in a situation and it's not good, and you've already been there, it's not good, it's not going to get better by itself. So if you're in that situation, it's beyond me as to why somebody would want to be a 1099 contractor compared to an employee. Because in an employee, you have benefits, company benefits, possibly health insurance. Other benefits that come with being an employee. Not all jobs have these, but a lot of them do. And, you're just missing out on so much of what you could have. So I would say, look at your situation. And if it doesn't feel right, you don't get compensated correctly, you're not getting settlement sheets, they don't take taxes, Social Security, Medicaid, unemployment out of your check as they should and turn it into the state. You probably need to step back and look at your situation and say, I think I could do better for myself.
Well, and be mindful, use common sense, do your research, do your homework. The best, way to get out of the contract or out of the misclassification is to never start or allow yourself to get put in that situation in the first place, right? But nobody ever wants to say that out loud, but I will, right? I mean, that's the real, if we as drivers keep allowing this, it will continue to run rampant in this industry. And that's one of the biggest problems in this industry is that we as drivers allow this to happen because we're on board with it.
Yeah.
And these carriers have an incentive to do this. This is helping them. It's not helping
It saves
you.
them money.
Financial incentive, yeah.
Okay.
What's more motivating than money?
Okay. Well, guys, we've run out of time, but thank you very much for all the information, and hopefully we save someone some trouble here.
Let's hope so.
Okie doke. Thank you very much.
Thanks as always, Mark.
I've been talking with Tom Crowley and Aaron Lynch of OOIDA's Compliance Department. And again, folks, that's IRS Form SS8. We'll have a link on our website. I'm Mark Rettig, and this is Landline Now.
Dispatch, I picked up that load of steel, so I'm ready to roll.
Sounds good. Remember, we're getting paid by weight, so make sure to use a CAT scale.
I wouldn't weigh anywhere else.
Forget miss accuracy when you're truck on a CAT scale.
Penske is the trusted source for quality used trucks. Whether you search our website, call our sales staff, or bid at our online auction, you are sure to find the right used truck for your business. Visit PenskeUsedTrucks.com to view our inventory and learn more.
Landline Now, welcome back. Like tires, fuel, and an engine, insurance is one of those things you just have to have for your truck. But not all insurance is created equal. Ashley Blackford is here with the experts from OOIDA's Truck Insurance Department to answer some questions.
Thanks, Mark, and hello to Trina Skywalker and Lisa Waskey with OOIDA's Insurance Department. How are you doing today, ladies?
Fantastic, Ashley.
Great.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Today we are talking about what you say is a very popular topic, and that is pausing truck insurance. I'm curious, why would someone want to pause their coverage?
Well, usually they just don't. They don't want to cancel it because they don't necessarily know what comes with a cancellation, or it's temporary. It's in their mind when they're asking the question. It's a way to keep your policy and not pay for it. Sometimes people are taking a vacation. Maybe it's summertime, or they're traveling home for a few weeks, and I think those are the most common reasons that people call and ask about that.
Could be, if their truck's broke down and they know, it's going to take a month to get it up and going. They think there's no reason to carry the insurance.
Right.
Now, I assume, like you said, multiple reasons, but really it comes down to wanting to save money, right?
Pretty much, yeah.
Now, is it possible? Like, can you pause your insurance?
No.
Okay.
I mean,
end of segment.
Yeah, we're done now. I don't know if there are companies out there that would allow it. I'm guessing not, because essentially you're keeping a policy in force when there's no payment. So if something were to happen, catastrophic, and maybe it's just a windstorm or something of that nature, not necessarily liability to the public, but and that could be it too. If your equipment gets stolen or maybe it's damage to the equipment. But if we were to keep a policy, we would still be obligated to pay out on a claim. I mean, I guess you could try to write an exclusion in there where it's like, hey, if you pause it, we're not covering, but anything can be fought in court.
Yeah, especially court of law.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. What are some things to keep in mind if someone does call and they say, hey, I want to pause my insurance? I guess what is your response to them when people do call in and ask that?
I mean, typically we say no. Obviously we can't
very
pause
nicely.
It. Yeah, very nicely.
Of course.
We say no, we can't. We just don't have a way of doing it. Talk to them about their policy and what it covers and why they should keep it. So they could possibly delete some coverages.
I was just going to say.
That aren't, needed while it's parked, like a breakdown, or gap. Well, no, gap they'd want to keep. Sorry. I'm jumping the gun. They definitely want to keep that, so.
We have, and I think a lot of times, too, it's people with their authority.
Yeah.
And they don't want FMCSA to get a notice of cancellation, which is perfectly reasonable, because then you get these letters from them that's like, hey, we're going to get you.
Yeah, and then
they don't say that, but but they're going to inactivate your authority, exactly. It's a whole process. So like Lisa said, sometimes we'll offer to take off cargo, because you don't have to have cargo if the truck's not running. Optional coverages.
Yeah.
We can offer to knock the rate down as much as possible while it's parked.
Raise their deductible if they wanted to, but
right.
So.
Or cancel it. I mean, it's really one of those two things.
Yeah. What are some of the things you do say, if someone's like, okay, well then I'll cancel it. What are some things that people should keep in mind if that's the route they're going to go?
Well, if they have a loan on the truck, their finance company is not going to be happy. I mean, they want you to protect that truck 24/7, even though it's parked and you're not using it. Like Trina said, if there's something catastrophic, fires, all the wildfires that are happening right now, that happens, you're out and they're out money. If they see that or get a notice of cancellation, they might force place insurance.
Which is the bigger problem. That's exactly what was going on in my head while you were talking about it. I'm like, they'll put their coverage on it, and it's junk.
And it's triple the price of what you can get from most people.
Okay. You guys are kind of like the glass half empty. Like you always have to think of like worst case scenario, don't you?
Well, yeah, you do.
Yeah.
I mean, you see enough claims, you see enough situations or hear of them. We don't always see them here, but sometimes you're just going through a quote on the phone and you hear of these horror stories and things that have happened. And we don't try to be glass half empty, but we also want them to think about, like, here's potentially what could happen. And so, like, how do you want to be proactive now so you're not stuck with a junky policy later or, revoked authority. And after that, it's their choice.
Yeah.
And we support that choice,
Yeah.
But give them all the detail and then let them choose.
I assume a lot of people probably aren't thinking, they're thinking, my truck's broke down, it's going to be in the shop, like what could go wrong?
Sure.
And then in come you guys to say what could go wrong because like you said, you've heard it, you've seen it.
Right.
Has anyone ever canceled and then forgotten to rewrite their policy when they've gotten back out on the road?
I'm sure. I know I've seen that. There have been cases where I've seen they will delete some coverages, keep some stuff active, but they'll delete those optional coverages.
The cargo.
Right. And then get back out on the road and forget to call and re-add that. And that could be bad. I mean, sorry for lack of a better word.
No, it's really the best way to sum it up because otherwise we're going to go into a very long spiel about cargo loss and cleanup and towing and how you could be out $200,000.
Yeah. Right. Yep.
Glass half empty.
Exactly. You both have mentioned a few things, that you could take away. But if someone is in a tight situation, they're looking for ways to save, say they are going on vacation for a couple of months or they're going to be out of the truck, what are some of the things, some tips that you have that they could save a few dollars?
Well, like we were saying before, you can delete some coverages. It's a good opportunity to really dig into the policy and see, are you leased onto a company? Do they happen to have bobtail also? Because we've seen that happen. Turns out they're paying for the coverage through us and the motor carrier. Lisa talked about gap insurance, and honestly, we do have folks who forget to remove that once the loan is paid off. And so it's kind of an aha moment for them, like, oh, no, I don't need that anymore. And so that's some of the things we recommend, and that's what we'll discuss when they call in. Do they have a stated? We don't offer this, but other companies offer a stated value type of policy for physical damage. So it's an opportunity to look at that. Do you have an old truck and still have $100,000 on it? Because
that's another thing with stated limit, and that's why we don't do them. A lot of people forget to call in and adjust them. Even though they bought the truck 10 years ago, it's probably still not valued at that same purchase price.
Right.
Kind of goes to the importance of knowing, what's covered. Obviously, if they call in, you guys will help, but you're not going through people's policies being like, do they still need this? Do they still need that?
Right.
When we send out the renewal paperwork, it'll show what they have, and we're hoping that they look at that, and that's not always the case. I mean, I don't always look at my insurance paperwork.
Some folks are really diligent about it, and Lisa, I mean, it's funny because we will sit here and be like, and you need to do this, and you need to think about that, and maybe, read your policy a little more, and I mean, I've got a stack of mail that probably has 3 things for my insurance company, and I'll look at it at some point.
Yes. Yeah. I can honestly say I've never looked at policy wording.
I have.
Have you? Good for you.
For
no
5 minutes before my attention is drawn elsewhere.
Because it is a lot, but that's what, OOIDA is here for, that you guys can break it down to make it make sense.
Absolutely.
Right.
Well, and that's funny you say that because you know how much I've read our policy wording? I'm not good about looking at my insurance paperwork, but man, I can tell you some stuff about our wording. Which is best for the listeners.
Yes, exactly. Does it come as a surprise to people when they call and they're like, hey, I want to pause, and you're like, you can't do that? Like, are they quite surprised?
I feel like they are. I mean, they just don't understand. They're thinking, how can I save money? And that's the only way they're going.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I do think that once you start explaining it, they do understand a little better. Kind of going back to the ripple effect of things that could happen. One of the things, if they have their own authority, one of the things we make sure they know is that brokers and shippers do look at how long you've had your authority. And so if they see a break, then they may not feel comfortable loading you. Not that we see that all the time, but there's some folks out there that are very concerned about that aspect.
Right.
There's several different things. The reinstatement process, and one that Lisa and I know we've both discussed it with customers numerous times over the years, but it's what are your rates going to be like later? And that's a huge factor to consider.
Yeah, because if you've been with a company for a long time, you probably are top tier. You have the best rates. And you cancel, most insurance companies are going to consider you brand new again.
Right.
So you'll lose those breaks.
Yeah, you'll have maybe discounts for longevity with no claims. I don't know that any of them are called loyal customer, but that's essentially what it is.
Yeah.
You've been with us for 10 years. You haven't had claims. They're going to look at that at renewal. And so, like Lisa said, if you cancel that, it's possible you're going to be paying a much higher rate.
And no matter what, I mean, I know they can be cautious, the people that want to cancel like physical damage that protects the equipment itself. They could say, oh, it's in a gated, locked with cameras and that's great. That they're taking the caution and protection of their equipment, but that's not going to stop somebody from breaking in, stealing it. It's not going to stop a tornado, anything like that. Anything can happen. You can prepare.
Yeah.
But that's why you carry insurance to protect it.
Well, and like you said earlier, maybe it's in the shop, and we've had that conversation too. They're like, well, the shop's liable. Well, typically, yes. But part of having insurance, and I don't think a lot of people think about it this way, part of having insurance is having representation. And so if they are liable and maybe they're trying to get out of it, or maybe they have a clause like, well, unless this happens and then it's not on us, number one, you have that insurance policy to
fall back on,
yes. And number two, you also have some sort of representation where your insurance company says, oh, no, they're paying.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're going to pay, and they will kind of help you fight that battle.
Now, say if I have insurance coverage and I say, you know what, let's cancel it. And then 2 months later, I call you back. We have to start from scratch?
Yeah.
You're not saving my file on your desktop?
We may have some of the information on file, but
you have to go through
the whole process again. Yep.
Well, and we actually do have to verify everything.
Yeah.
And we've had that call too. People will call back to write their rewrite their policy, and we'll start asking the questions, and they're like, same as before. And we all know how irritating it is to call a company often enough where you're like, my name, you know my blood type, actually. We talk all the time. And so I get the frustration from the customer side. From the insurance company side, we've seen numerous where we tell them, I'm so sorry, we're obligated to go through this again.
Yeah.
And then we'll verify a driver, and they're like, oh, no, that's changed. Or maybe address change or something like that. So
don't have a lien holder anymore.
Right.
Something along those lines.
All right. Ladies, very helpful information. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Our thanks to Trina Skywalker and Lisa Waskey of OOIDA's Insurance Department. If you have any questions about insurance, you can call 816-229-5791. For Landline Now, I'm Ashley Blackford. We'll be back after this.
At Truck Stop, we built a better load board for carriers like you. Sign up today and access over 600,000 loads on the most trusted online load board. Learn why the best in the business rely on Truck Stop to make more money and start driving your profit today.
Capital Reman, the leader in remanufactured diesel engines and components, has partnered with OOIDA to offer exclusive member benefits. Visit capitalreman.com today to support America's transportation industry and take advantage of your benefits.
Since you started, what you've loved about trucking is the freedom. Heading out on your favorite route, a good driving song, and thinking about truck insurance. Well, maybe not that last one. That's why we're here. At OOIDA, we have a full range of truck insurance products, expert advice, and great customer service, helping you get the right coverage for your operation. Go to OOIDA.com, because your job is to drive. Our job is to help with everything else.
Tort reform, it's not just fun to say, it's important as well. Welcome back to Landline Now and our weekly state legislative update. Several states are looking at ways to level the playing field when it comes to civil damages in truck crashes. And joining us to discuss is Keith Goebel, Landline Magazine's state legislative editor. Keith, always good to see you.
Scott, I'm going to leave you to saying tort reform for this segment.
It's fun to say.
I'm going to try to stay away from it.
All right, tort reform.
Because it is a bit like what are we talking about here?
It's not about tortellini.
It has a term. It has tort is it's a legalese.
Yeah.
But it's just like, okay, so what the heck does that mean?
Well, we're gonna talk about it here,
Right.
and it feels like we have been seeing more and more tort reform efforts throughout the states in recent years. And generally speaking, these efforts seem to be in favor of truckers and trucking companies, most of the time at least, right?
Yeah, obviously, OOIDA through the years has advocated for tort reform.
Yeah, you did it.
Hey,
Ring the bell.
Couldn't help myself. But yeah, there are multiple facets of this, specifically that the trucking industry is affected by. Looking again like civil liability rules, looking to reduce lawsuit abuse. It has been the focus of OOIDA's efforts, and of course, in most instances, you see state trucking associations that are obviously on seeing it very similarly, because as far as trucking operations out there and how they can be hugely affected in a negative state, but. Yeah, I mean, one state that has already taken action this year, did not take them long to get it all the way through the process and signed into law, is in the state of Arkansas. Specifically, the reform that they're making here with this new law is to limit phantom damages. Some folks are probably familiar with the phrase. What they're talking about here is, you've got... Say you've got a plaintiff and they are seeking recovery from the full amount of charges that a medical provider sent, and there is no adjustment being made if the insurance company comes in and negotiates a lesser amount to be paid, which has been pointed out that is very common. You've got the what some would call the sticker price, and then you've got the negotiated price. Whenever there is a civil lawsuit and the defendant has to pay the sticker price, that is referred to as the phantom damages. It's not the actual damages that the plaintiff should be trying to recover. Anyway, with this Florida law, it is putting into statute that only costs that were actually paid by or on behalf of the plaintiff can be included in the recovery. So there is that protection that they have not had there in the state of Arkansas.
But they do now.
Yeah.
It's very common sense. I mean, as you explain it there, this is one of these things that you would think would be something that was already in place because it sounds like common sense. It wasn't, but now it is there in the state of Arkansas, as you pointed out. And I think that probably is a theme with these other states that are looking at this issue and looking at it and saying that this just isn't right the way we do things now. Nebraska is one of them. It's not a law there, but we're talking about a few bills, I guess, there in Nebraska that would sort of take aim at this issue.
Yeah, again, looking to make additional reforms. One of the topics in a bill there in Nebraska, capping non-economic damages for personal injury. The focus is on non-economic damages that are related to incidents that involved a commercial vehicle. So essentially what this bill would be doing is stating that recoverable damages of medical expenses in personal injury or wrongful death cases, they would be limited to the amounts that were actually paid rather than billed. Claimants in these cases, they would be required to disclose a third-party medical payment agreement where you've got someone who's not involved in the case, they're coming in and they're helping fund the case, is what they're addressing here with this disclosure. As has been pointed out with third-party litigation financing, it can make it difficult if there was to be a settlement or a potential settlement in a case. And you've got someone you've got a group that has come in and they're financing for this case. They're probably going to want to go ahead and, try to get the maximum value out of the case, and they're much less likely to settle. So putting in a disclosure requirement, this bill includes, so that both sides are well aware of that setup there. And then there's another bill in Nebraska that covers seatbelt use, a requirement that it be allowed as evidence in a civil proceeding right now, and it has as the way that's been for like the past 40 years about in Nebraska. You're prohibited from seatbelt evidence in cases, these civil cases. So looking to remove that. Among the issues there is a standalone bill in Nebraska that covers that third party litigation financing. But yes, definitely. Reform efforts, lawsuit reform efforts, definitely a topic being addressed in Nebraska.
And other efforts underway on tort reform are taking place in Maryland, Oklahoma, and South Carolina. We won't get to that right now, but people can go to landline.media to check out the updates on those states and what they're doing. I did want to talk about Michigan here before we say goodbye to you, Keith, where there's a plan to, and I'm going to put this in quotations here, fix the damn roads, which is a slogan that's being linked to a new $3 billion transportation funding plan. Doesn't look like it's smooth going, though, there in Michigan with regard to this plan.
Yeah, I think if you are from Michigan or you are familiar with the Michigan governor, the fix the damn roads is something that you've probably been hearing for, 7 years now.
It's a campaign thing, right?
Yes, it was a campaign slogan that the governor had. Still waiting on that to actually happen in Michigan. As has been pointed out, they've got an annual deficit for road funding that's in the neighborhood of $4 billion now.
Wow.
The governor has a $3 billion plan that she came up with, or kind of is touting now, with some, I don't want to say some general or broad provisions, but kind of outlining what she is advocating for. The focus being on local roads, transit, improving safety there on the state's highways. Multiple components that she has thrown out is what she would like for the legislature to approve.
Yeah, and I think a big part of this is how that $3 billion is going to be paid for. There are a few ideas that are being floated out there. I know fuel tax revenue being one of them, kind of taking aim at corporations as well. Talk a little bit about that, and then if you could real quick talk about the opposition to this plan, which seems to be pretty strong out there.
Well, in Michigan, they've got their excise tax that they collect on fuel, and they've got a sales tax. The sales tax that's collected on fuel, which is at 6%, does not go, there's a portion of it that is diverted from transportation. What she has talked about doing is ensuring that all state fuel tax revenue goes to roads. She didn't come out specifically and say, make sure that all sales tax that's collected on fuel goes to roads, but that's the interpretation. Yeah, there's also talk about having corporations there like Amazon, Facebook, X, having them contribute more. Really putting the blame on them for having large trucks using Michigan roadways, and the belief being that they need to be paying more their fair share. As another thing that she had pointed out, I don't want to say necessarily that there's opposition there in Michigan. The focus by House Republicans, the majority there in the Michigan State House, on the House side, is one of the things that they've talked about is using money that's already available, the sales tax that's on fuel already, and then a corporate income tax revenue, applying that for transportation.
Updates to these stories and more at landline.media. Keith, we appreciate your time.
Thanks for having me.
And that's our show for today. Thanks for tuning in. We're back tomorrow with another one. So until then, take care and please drive safe out there.
Thanks for listening. Be sure to like and subscribe. If you want more content, go to landline.media to get updated news, information, and archived editions of our show. Once again, that's landline.media.
I'm a dad,
a son,
a husband,
wife.
I'm a writer,
photographer.
I farm.
I'm a veteran.
I love old cars, fishing,
my kids,
chrome.
And I am
a
professional truck driver.
And together we are OOIDA.
OOIDA was founded by truckers to stand up and speak on behalf of truckers. We've done that by combining the individual voices of our members into a single, powerful voice. Protecting your interests, defending your rights.
Join us!
Make your voice heard. Join OOIDA, the Owner-Operator Independent Drivers Association. Call 1-800-444-5791 or visit OOIDA.com.